So after his death, they appointed former CIA director William Colby to investigate the plane crash. What did he conclude about the plane crash?
Okay, so this is what I've got. I mean, I put it in the book too. And this is kind of interesting. William Colby investigated Caradori's death. Now, he told people who were affiliated with the Franklin Committee, and he also told Gary Caradori's wife that Gary Caradori had been assassinated, but he wasn't willing to state that publicly. Now, William Colby had a very, very strange death. And William Colby was kind of interesting as a CI director during the church hearings in 1977. Two CI directors were called Dick Helms and then William Colby, who was then the CI director. Dick Helms didn't say a word, but Colby surrendered a lot of the CIA's little secrets about killing people and the mind control stuff, actually penetrating the media, all that stuff. It was called the family jewels, and Colby spilled all of that. And he was pretty cool with everything he did, and he was actually head of the Phoenix program, which assassinated 20,000 or so innocent Vietnamese. So he'd done some pretty ominous stuff, but I've been told that he had re-embraced Catholicism, and he was cool with everything that he had done, except he just didn't the kids the way that the intelligence had used children. He just couldn't reconcile that with that. And according to this source, he was going to out the CIA for that. Now I don't know if the source is telling the truth or not, but William Colby had a very strange death. He went canoeing in April, and he was sick, and it was a cold night, and his dinner was on the table. So, and then he wasn't found for about a week, and then they found him right where he'd basically dumped the canoe, and he didn't have any shoes on. I mean, he's 76, and he's going canoeing in really cold weather without any shoes. So that's a suspicious death in my book. Now, is
Yeah.
is is that because Colby was going to blow the whistle on the CIA's use of children? I just don't know.
With Colby too, I will add that he seemed to have been in the middle of making dinner, and his computer was on, like in the middle of some document, and I don't know what the document was. It seemed like he had, if he really did die, like just a canoeing accident in the middle of the night, he stopped both things he was doing and decided, well, might as well get a ride in before I fully finish making dinner or
Yeah,
writing this letter.
it's quite anomalous. Now, his kid came out with a documentary, and I think that there was a lot of estrangement there between him and his. I believe it was his oldest son, and his oldest son felt it was a suicide.
Mm-hmm.
But William Colby had remarried. He seemed happy with his wife. They seemed to be in love. As I said, he had re-embraced Catholicism. I mean, that doesn't mean that people are incomprehensible and they kill each other or kill themselves for very strange reasons. But yeah, William Colby's death is definitely an enigma, and I don't see how someone can draw a definitive conclusion on whether or not he was. I mean, his son believes it was suicide. I believe it was murder. Um, People can draw their own conclusions.
Right. It's not impossible that, like, he was in the middle of doing something and just, I don't know, got hit with a pang of
To kill
guilt
himself.
or whatever. It's not totally impossible, but it is very strange.
Well, I mean, if you're eating dinner and you say, I'm not even going to finish this meal, I'm just going to go kill myself, that would be, it's kind of abnormal human behavior, I would think. I mean, like I said, humans are kind of incomprehensible, but yes, it would be quite anomalous.
Well, some people like lunch more.
Nick, I guess just like really the most heartbreaking and like really the hardest stuff in your book to like to take on and really like I don't know, like just take into your mind are the accounts of the victims themselves. And I'm just wondering, like, so as a journalist, seeking these people out, hearing their stories, like, you know, I mean, which are, you know, really, really hard to, really hard to think about, really hard to write about, I'm sure. But like, how as a journalist do you, um, you know, find these people, sort of form relationship to them, but also as a journalist have to maintain a kind of a distance or a skepticism, and then certainly in light of what you just said, which is really one of the most horrific parts of this story, is that they are all in some way rendered not credible by the things that have happened to them. Because, like, you know, in all of them, as you might imagine, in various ways, are dealing with, you know, have dealt with drug addiction, mental illness, incarceration, so that when you put them on a witness stand or you reprint their story, it's not that hard for, you know, a defense attorney or the media or whatever to say, oh, like these claims are so outlandish, you know, like the names that they're saying, like what they're alleging is so unspeakable. But then, like, you know, look at who the person saying it is. Like, I mean, like how do you deal with that give and take between the human beings whose stories that you're recording, and this horrible fact of what's happened to them, and like a sort of a journalistic skepticism or rigor.
Well, I was fortunate getting back to Gary Caradori. He had a leads list that had 60 victims. So the victims that I found, except for one, were on Gary Caradori's leads list. So he had vetted them essentially for me. And it was up to me to find them. And as I said earlier, a lot of them don't really use their social security numbers too often. It was up to me to find them and then get them to talk. Now, sometimes I could find them and then they would talk to me that day. Other times I would spend a lot of time finding a victim and the conversation would last about 13 seconds. There was Alicia Owen. It took me quite some time to for her to trust me. Um, I mean, was sentenced to 9 to 15 years for telling the truth and put in solitary for 2 years. So she's very cautious about who she lets into her life. And now here's I'll give you an interesting anecdote. One of the kids on Gary Caradori's these lists was Rue Fox. And Rue had been a Boys Town student. I mean, he'd been in multiple foster care programs before that and been molested. And King brutally molested him when he was at Boys Town, and he required stitches, which was done at, I believe, the Boys Town. Boys Town is an incorporated city. They have their own police force. They have their own post office. Post office. They have their own zip code. So, I mean, Boys Town is kind of like a closed system. So it's very easy for them to cover up child abuse. And I could not find Rue. I looked for him for about 3 years. Now, I wasn't looking for him like full time, but if I had a little extra time, I'd say, I'm going to look for this guy or I'm going to look for that guy. And I was in Nebraska and I had like 6 addresses for Rue. He was quite nomadic. And I went to all 6 and I came up empty. Finally, I hired a private detective and she found him. Well, she found where his father lived. And I called up and she told me this guy is a very dangerous guy, very dangerous, and be really cautious with him. He's done 10 years for armed robbery and he's got a rap sheet that's like 2 feet long. So I called Rue. I got his father's phone number. He was living with his father. I called him up and he said, "Are you a cop?" And I said, "No, I'm a journalist." And he goes, "If you, I'll meet you, but if you're a cop, I'm going to snap your neck." So, and then we met at this bar. To say that this was a sleazy bar would actually be kind of charitable. We met at this bar that he chose, and I ordered a cranberry juice, which I really felt like I was going to get E. coli or salmonella from. And I was there girding myself to meet Rue. And all of a sudden, Rue bursts through the front door and he's got 2 people with him. And I got up to say hi to him and he goes, "Back here." So I'm in this back room. I definitely know where the exit the exit is because I know that things could get ugly here really quickly. And Rue said, "Are you a cop? Are you a cop?" And I said, "No, I'm not a cop. I'm not a cop." And then I showed him this documentation that I had on him, where he had been at Boys Town and then he'd been at this foster care home. And then at that point, he believed me. but he hadn't thought about that in many, many years. He said, "You opened the wrong door," because he got very, very angry when he started remembering um, how he was abused as a child. So this is my last day in Nebraska, at least for this trip. I've been there for a while, and I said, "Well, I'm going to try Rue one more time, and hopefully, I'm unscathed." So I go up to Rue. He's working on a car in the driveway, and he goes, "You know, I've been thinking about talking to you. Let's talk." And then I interviewed him, and the 12-year-old, I mean, his suit of armor came off, and the 12-year-old that was damaged, really damaged, came out, and he just broke down crying. Um, he was that very damaged 12-year-old, and so that's one account of. I mean, and I've dealt with a lot of survivors since then, investigating Epstein. Where journalists make a big mistake is that, like with Rue, I mean, you open that up. I opened that up, and I had to help him put it back together. And Rue was shooting crystal meth and drinking vodka, and I got him into a rehab program. So when you're dealing with survivors, it's not like you're dealing with the average person that you're going to interview. You have to be cautious, not only for yourself but for them emotionally. It's very important. We're seeing Julie Brown, who broke the of the Miami Herald, who did the 3-part Epstein series. She's getting sued by 2 of those survivors, Epstein survivors. And what journalists don't understand is that if you're going to open these doors and talk to survivors, you have an extra level of responsibility. And and I've tried to have that with the victims. Now, Rue, we kept in touch, but then he went back to where and I've never been able to find him since. So his father's died, and yeah. So I have no idea if Rue is alive or not. I would say if he was hitting it like he was hitting it, I would say he's probably not alive.
I guess like to bring it to the present moment. I guess like this is my last question for you. Like to read your book and then obviously like to know what one knows about the Epstein case. I'm just wondering, what do you make of this current political moment in which accusations of pedophilia, grooming, and child abuse are becoming more and more commonplace, and I would say deployed in an incredibly grim, cynical, and glib manner, and accusations directed at teachers, even children themselves, or elected politicians. On the one hand, like you read about the Franklin credit scandal, about Epstein. It's like it's it's not hard to believe, and in fact, it's actually like factually documented that as we've just been talking about here, these networks of elite child predation reach to the highest levels of power in this country. People know about that, but now it's like that accusation is being used, particularly by people. I mean, and the Franklin credit story. I mean, like it's reaching to the highest levels of the Republican Party specifically, and now in this case, they're the ones that are like the men in power are using it to slander like gay people or their political opponents. Like, what do you make of the uses and abuses of these narratives of elite child abuse in the contemporary media and our politics?
Well, I mean, you've got the QAnon stuff, which those people are definitely misguided. Absolutely. But then you've got the other side of it. There's an article in the Atlantic that talks about all, child trafficking is fake. And I wrote an email to that writer. She was talking about all these fake trafficking networks, and I told her that there are trafficking networks. And the thing about it is, these kids get so damaged when they are molested young. It's really difficult for them to have a decent life afterwards. But when you get into the numbers now, the CDC estimates that 25% of women, and the CDC generally errs on the side of cautiousness, but the CDC says 25% of women have been molested as minors.